Someone kept leaving gifts at my door, then I saw who it was. I've lived in the same building on the Upper East Side for 3 years now, long enough to memorize the rhythm of it, the squeaky elevator, the neighbor who always sings off key in the hallway, the thump of packages dropped outside each door. Nothing ever felt strange about my place, nothing ever felt unsafe, until the gifts started showing up. The first one was small enough that I almost stepped on it. A tiny white box tied with a navy ribbon, sitting right in the center of my doormat. No note, no name, just sitting there like it had been waiting for me. Inside was a bracelet, thin, gold, delicate. The kind of thing I would have picked for myself. I remember standing there, confused, looking up and down the hallway, wondering if maybe one of my friends had ordered something for my birthday and forgot to write a card. But it wasn't my birthday and none of them knew my building code. It should have struck me as weird, it should have alarmed me, but it didn't, not that day. I just shrugged it off and placed the bracelet on my dresser. I didn't even wear it. 2 days later, a second box appeared. Same size, same ribbon. This time, inside was a book, a copy of a novel I'd mentioned once, exactly once, while chatting with someone passing by in the lobby. I tried to remember who it was, who could possibly have remembered one random comment from one random morning. No one came to mind. I brushed it off again, because that's what you do when you're trying not to seem paranoid. You make excuses that feel safer than the truth. But by the fourth gift, I couldn't do that anymore. Because by the fourth gift, I realized someone wasn't guessing what I liked, they knew. They knew me. The fourth box held a photograph, an old camera-style print of a street fair I'd visited a few months earlier. The photo wasn't from my phone, it wasn't from social media, it was taken from behind me. I could see myself in the corner of the frame, laughing, holding a lemonade, completely unaware someone had been close enough to capture that moment. I felt something in me drop. Not fear exactly, but that prickling sense that someone had been standing in the shadows longer than I knew. For a while, I tried to convince myself it had to be a friend trying to be thoughtful. Or maybe a neighbor who misdelivered something. Maybe. That word became my whole survival strategy, but deep down I knew, these weren't random gifts. They were too personal, too specific, too intentional, and the strangest part, they didn't feel threatened. They felt gentle, almost careful, like someone was trying to express something they couldn't say out loud. I didn't know then that someone had been living behind my shadow for months, maybe longer. And he wasn't the kind of stalker you see in movies, not violent, not bold, not dangerous in the traditional sense. No, he was something harder to spot, someone who loved quietly, someone who watched instead of acted, someone who followed me out of longing, not cruelty, and that made everything so much more complicated. Because people like him hide in plain sight, his name was Austin. At the time, I didn't think about him much. He lived 2 floors above me. We'd met once in the laundry room when the dryer ate my quarters, and he offered me some of his. He looked harmless, tall, soft-spoken, polite. A little awkward maybe, but in a sweet way. He remembered my name even when I forgot his. Sometimes he held the elevator for me. Sometimes he asked how work was going. I never thought he paid attention to the answers. He wasn't someone who stood out. But looking back, that was the point. He didn't want to stand out. He wanted to blend in, stay close enough to see me but far enough that I wouldn't notice him watching. I only learned that later. Back when the gifts started, he wasn't even in my mind. But the deliveries didn't stop. One morning, I opened my door and found a handwritten note with no signature. Just 6 simple words, "You deserve everything you dream of." That was the first time fear and warmth tangled inside me, confusing me. The words were kind, gentle, even, but the anonymity wasn't. My hands shook reading it, not because it felt threatening, but because I felt seen. More than I wanted to be. My best friend Jenna told me to call the cops. But what was I supposed to say? That someone gave me jewelry and books and notes that sounded like they came from a therapist with beautiful handwriting. That someone had taken a photo of me at a street fair months earlier and left it in a tiny white box tied with a ribbon. Whoever he wasn't hurting me. He wasn't threatening me. And some part of me, some stubborn, lonely part, didn't want to believe this was a bad thing. Because at that time in my life I was drifting. Work was stressful. Dating was exhausting. I was tired of putting so much love into people who barely offered me half of it back. So when the gifts kept coming, there was a small part of me that wondered, what if someone out there actually cared? What if someone noticed me in a way no one else ever had? I hate admitting that, but it's the truth. Then the line got crossed, not dramatically, not violently, but quietly. So quietly that I almost missed it. One night, after a long day at work, I dropped my purse on the couch and found something in the side pocket that wasn't mine. A folded piece of paper. At first I thought it was a receipt, but when I opened it, my stomach flipped. It was a sketch of me, sitting in the lobby reading a book. The drawing was beautiful, soft lines, shaded like the artist spent hours studying me. It wasn't creepy, it wasn't sexual, it was admiring, too admiring. And I hadn't felt someone standing near me that day. Someone had been close enough to draw me, watching my posture, the way I tucked my hair behind my ear, the way I crossed my legs, close enough to memorize me, and I didn't notice. That was the moment everything shifted. The gifts had never entered my apartment, but the drawing did. That meant he got close enough to slip it into my bag. I told myself maybe I dropped my purse open in the hallway. Maybe someone found it. Maybe the drawing fell in by accident. Maybe, always maybe. But the place where I found the paper, deep in a pocket I rarely opened, wasn't an accident. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but I scanned every hallway as I left for work. Every shadow in the lobby felt like it had eyes. I pretended not to be scared, but fear has a way of tightening around your ribs like a belt. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering, who would care enough to follow me but not enough to talk to me? It didn't make sense, until I saw him, until everything clicked. It was a Thursday. I came home late, around 9 p.m., and when I stepped off the elevator, I heard footsteps behind me. Not rushed, not heavy, just a soft, uncertain echo of mine, keeping distance but never falling too far behind. I turned slightly, just enough to catch a reflection in the metal paneling on the wall. It was Austin. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his eyes were low, he wasn't smiling, he wasn't smirking. He looked like someone caught doing something he'd convinced himself was harmless. I didn't say anything, neither did he, but suddenly every gift made sense. The bracelet, the book, the photo, the note, the drawing, he had been there for all of it. I walked faster, not running, just faster. My heartbeat wasn't fear, it was confusion. Why him? Why me? Why in this way? When I reached my apartment door, I pretended not to notice him slowing down at the far end of the hallway, pretending to check his phone, pretending he hadn't followed me home step by step. I unlocked my door. The moment it closed, I pressed my back against it and exhaled. That was when I heard it, a soft thump outside, a box, another one. I waited just to be sure he was gone. A minute, then 2, then 5. When I finally opened the door, my hallway was empty, nothing but humming lights and silence, and the box, this one was different. No ribbon, no wrapping, not perfect like the others, almost like it had been rushed. When I opened it, my breath caught. Inside was the bracelet I'd put on my dresser, the one from the very first gift. Only now it had a small piece missing from the clasp, like it had broken, like someone had taken it back to fix it, or kept it, or held on to it for months. It wasn't a new gift, it was my own bracelet, returned to me, and that felt more intimate, more emotional, more vulnerable than all the gifts before it. Almost like he was saying, "You didn't wear this, but I still wanted you to have it." Or worse, "I held on to this because it mattered to me, even if it didn't to you." I realized then that Austin wasn't trying to scare me, he wasn't trying to claim me. He was trying to be close without risking the possibility of me turning him away. And that kind of longing, that kind of quiet obsession, is its own kind of danger. Not because he wanted to hurt me, but because he didn't know how to exist without watching me. And I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't over. For a few days after that, nothing else appeared at my door. No drawings, no jewelry, no shadows in the hallway. It was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the building itself was holding its breath with me. I kept catching myself listening for footsteps, listening for that soft rhythmic echo that always seemed to follow mine. I didn't want to admit it, but the silence made me more anxious than the gifts ever did. Because silence meant he knew I knew, and I didn't know what that would make him do. I told myself Austin wasn't dangerous. He wasn't the violent type. His energy was too soft, too unsure, too lonely. But obsession doesn't have to be violent to be frightening. Sometimes the gentlest people carry the deepest shadows, shadows they don't even recognize in themselves. The first time I saw him after discovering the bracelet, he didn't look at me. Not once. I was checking my mailbox, and he walked into the lobby holding a grocery bag, shoulders tucked forward like he was trying to shrink himself down to nothing. Normally, he said hi. Normally, he smiled. But this time, he just walked past me like we were strangers. And it wasn't indifference, it was shame. A heavy, crushing shame that rolled off him like thick air. He knew he'd crossed a line, he just didn't know which one. I could have left it at that. I could have pretended the gifts never happened and gone back to my normal life, ignoring the truth that had been living 2 floors above me all along. But the uncertainty gnawed at me. Because I had no idea what he felt. Was it love, obsession, fear, loneliness, or some mix of all of it? And what would happen if he never got the courage to speak? Would he keep watching me forever, leaving gifts forever, living behind my shadow forever? I needed closure, but I didn't know how to get it without hurting him. One night, I found myself pacing my living room, replaying the whole thing in my head, the sketch, the photo, the note, the bracelet. I sat down and tried to imagine what would drive someone like Austin to this. And the more I thought about him, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he always stepped aside in the hallway, the way he seemed afraid of his own presence, the clearer it became. He wasn't stalking me because he felt entitled to me. He was watching me because he felt unworthy of me. There's a difference, a big one. And that difference was what pushed me to knock on his door instead of staying silent. I remember standing there, heart pounding, hand raised but frozen an inch before knocking. I almost turned around 3 times. Finally, I forced myself to tap on the door. Softly at first, then a little louder. I heard movement inside, quick, startled movement, and then silence, like he was holding his breath. "Austin," I said, "it's me." Another beat of silence. Then the faintest sound, like his breath shaking. He opened the door halfway. His hair was messy, his face flushed like he'd been stressed for hours. His eyes flicked up at me then down again, almost instantly, like looking at me for more than a second hurt. "Hey," I said gently. He swallowed hard. "Hi." I could see the fear on his face, not fear of me, but fear of what I might say. "Can we talk?" I asked. He hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. His apartment was simple, tidy in the way someone keeps things when they don't want to take up too much space in the world. No decorations, no personal touches, except on a small desk by the window. That's where I saw it, the boxes, all the little white boxes, some flattened, some still tied with navy ribbon, a stack of sketches. A few books, copies of the ones I'd mentioned reading. A small plastic bag holding the broken bracelet clasp. He froze when he saw me looking at it all. "I wasn't supposed to let you see that," he whispered. "Austin, you've been leaving things at my door." He closed his eyes like the words physically hurt him. "I know, I'm sorry." His voice cracked, not with guilt but embarrassment. I took a slow breath. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" He laughed softly, but not out of humor. It was a bitter laugh, the kind someone lets out when they've already accepted the worst possible answer. "Because you're you," he said. "And I'm me." The simplicity of it broke something in me. I walked closer, not touching anything, just closing the distance enough that he didn't feel so cornered. "Why the gifts?" I asked. He shrugged, looking at the floor. "I wanted to make you happy, but every time I thought about saying something to your face, I panicked, so I found other ways." "You followed me," I said, not accusing, just stating a fact. He winced. "Not to scare you. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I know that sounds bad, I know it does." "Why me, Austin?" He took a shaky breath and leaned against the wall like the truth was too heavy to stand with. "Because you're kind," he said. "Not just to me, to everyone. You ask the front desk guy how his day is. You give your leftovers to the security guard at night. You look people in the eye, you care. People like you don't usually see people like me." I didn't know what to say to that. He kept talking, voice trembling. "I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want you to think I wanted something from you. I just wanted to be around you, that's all." I felt this strange mix inside me, sadness, empathy, discomfort, compassion, all tangled together. Austin wasn't dangerous. He wasn't malicious, he was lonely. So lonely that watching me from a distance felt like a connection. "Austin, you crossed boundaries," I said softly. "Even if you didn't mean to." "I know," he whispered. "I've been trying to stop, I really have. But then I see you in the lobby, or walking down the street, or smiling at someone, and I don't know how to make myself disappear again." His honesty shook me. This wasn't a man trying to justify harmful behavior. This was someone who hated himself for it. "Austin," I said gently, "you're not invisible, you don't have to hide." His eyes filled, just barely. He blinked fast like he didn't want me to see. "I didn't want you to reject me," he whispered. "I couldn't handle the idea of you looking at me and wishing I'd never spoken." My heart ached, not romantically, not in the way he wanted, but out of human softness, for someone who had built his whole world around the fear of not being wanted. "Austin," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you're not a bad person, but this isn't love. This is fear dressed as devotion." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I won't call the police," I told him, "and I'm not angry at you, but you can't keep doing this. Not to me, not to anyone. Watching someone's life from the shadows isn't the same as being part of it." He nodded, tears slipping despite his attempts to hold them back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want to scare you. I just didn't know how to exist without feeling close to someone. And you need help with that," I said calmly. "Real help, from a therapist, not from following a girl who doesn't know you're behind her." He nodded again, this time more firmly. "I'll get help, I promise." I believed him, not because he said it, but because I could see how much it hurt him to admit how lost he was. I left his apartment quietly. He didn't follow me, he didn't leave any more gifts. Not the next day, not next week, not ever again. But every now and then I'd see him in the lobby, hair trimmed, clothes cleaner, shoulders higher. He'd nod at me politely, respectfully, like someone trying to rebuild himself from the inside out. And one day, months later, he stopped me, not with a gift, not with a sketch, with words. "Thank you," he said softly, "for seeing me as a person, even when I didn't know how to be one." I smiled. "You're learning. That's what matters." He nodded. Then he walked away, not behind me, not watching me, but toward his own life. And for the first time since the gifts appeared at my door, I felt safe. Not because he disappeared from my world, but because he finally stepped into his own. If you've ever learned something surprising about someone close to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. It helps more than you know.